After faking his death for 3 years, my husband finally came back. He stood on the empty stretch of land where the Marquis Manor should have been, eyes bulging, mouth hanging open in shock. Rage blazed across his face as he beat his chest, while cheers and applause echoed from every side of the street. He had run too far. He probably had no idea what had happened here. On the day of our grand wedding, he had taken his cousin, who had faked her death to elope with him, and fled the capital. At the same time, I had taken my dowry and faked my own death to escape as well. The Marquis Manor had been left without an heir, buried under debt. Its title had been stripped and its residence confiscated. According to the capital's newest planning decree, this place had been transformed into a street dedicated to street performances and acrobatics. When it came to running away, the two of us had truly been evenly matched. He had not cared in the slightest whether the Marquis Manor lived or died, yet somehow he had still expected me to shoulder its debts in his place. Dream on. In the bridal hall, my mother-in-law and my young sister-in-law clung to each other, weeping bitterly. A young servant had just stumbled inside to report that my husband, Lu Yan, had been galloping back to the capital for the wedding when he was ambushed and fell into a deep ravine. They had searched for half a day and found only a saddle and a broken rein. It seemed unlikely he had survived. I sat behind the red bridal veil, unable to suppress the cold smile curling at the corner of my mouth. In my previous life, I had knelt in this very bridal hall, just like this, listening to them cry and genuinely crying along with them, but I had not been crying for that husband I had never even met. I had been crying for my own fate. I had just stepped through the door, only to be condemned to a lifetime of widowhood. At that time, I had thought that, although the Marquis Manor had fallen on hard times, perhaps the people within it still held some warmth. As long as I treated my mother-in-law and young sister-in-law well, the three of us women could hold the household together. For 5 years, I poured my whole heart into that family. I cleared the mountain of shameful debts the old Marquis had accumulated in brothels during his lifetime. I managed the Marquis Manor in perfect order. I even saved up 100 taels of silver as dowry for my young sister-in-law and married her off in grand style. Just as I was about to enjoy a few peaceful days, Lu Yan returned. He returned from the dead with his beloved and their 2 illegitimate children. Only then did I learn that the entire Lu family was rotten to the core. To escape their debts, they had plotted for Lu Yan and his cousin, Lu Feng, to fake their deaths and flee. They had used me as a fat sheep to slaughter, forced me to clean up their mess, then driven me out onto the streets. I truly could not swallow that rage. Gritting my teeth, I went to beat the grievance drum and file a complaint. To file a lawsuit against one's in-laws, one had to first endure 20 strokes of the cane. I gritted my teeth and took every blow. Fortunately, the Jingzhao Yin Wenzheng had once been a student sponsored by my father in his youth. With his help, I managed to recover half of my dowry, obtain a letter of divorce, and return to my natal home, but that beast Lu Yan colluded with bandits to kill me on the road back. In the panic of fleeing, I fell into a deep ravine and plunged into the pool below. What a coincidence, it was the very same ravine where Lu Yan had supposedly died. I had even erected a cenotaph by the pool beneath that ravine and visited every year to pay my respects, so I knew the paths there well. Heaven never seals off every road. My swimming skills were not bad. After struggling through several near drownings, I finally survived. By the time I returned to the capital, 3 days had passed. The Lu family, thinking I was dead, was holding a grand feast in the manor to celebrate. I had managed the Lu household for many years and still had a few loyal confidants inside. Taking advantage of their joyful celebration, I had the chef poison the banquet with my temperament, which always distinguished gratitude and grudges very clearly. I never mistreated myself in the latter half of my life. In the western regions, I accumulated a vast fortune, kept several handsome young foreign men, and lived happily until the age of 80, ready to pass on in peace. I had thought only those with deep blood feuds would be granted a second chance to rewrite their fate. I never expected that someone like me, who had settled her scores on the spot, could also receive a do-over. Just thinking about having to deal with the Liu family's mess all over again immediately stirred in me the desire to flee. I was old now. I did not want to waste even a little extra energy, nor endure any more unnecessary suffering. Aside from watching the drama from the sidelines and enjoying the show, I wanted to do nothing else. I had long passed the age of 50, the age of understanding heaven's will. I knew very well that meeting force with force was an inferior strategy. Of the 36 stratagems, fleeing was the best. If Liu Yan could run, why couldn't I? If he ran, I would run too. Flee early, retire early. After carefully planning every detail of my escape, I turned and gave Taiyun a few instructions. Once she left, I fiercely pinched myself, took a deep breath, and forcefully lifted the red bridal veil, revealing a face covered in tears. "Taiyu, prepare the horses!" I cried out in sorrowful despair. "My husband cannot be dead. I must find him!" Amid the whispers filling the hall, my mother-in-law hurried forward in panic and grabbed me. "Child, leave the search to the servants. You stay home and wait. Don't even think of going out." I painfully shook off her hand. "No, if my husband is dead, I will not live alone either." As I spoke, I led several maidservants and strode out of the manor. The carriage outside had been prepared long ago. The driver cracked his whip. Dust billowed, and the carriage sped away with me inside, kicking up a cloud of sand that struck Madame Liu full in the face as she chased after us. Inside the carriage, I immediately removed my bridal robe and draped a plain outer robe over myself. Beside me, Taiyu swiftly removed the heavy hairpins and ornaments from my head, casually replacing the phoenix crown on top of the discarded bridal clothes. The carriage flew like the wind and soon arrived at the place where Liu Yan had supposedly fallen into the ravine. A crowd had already gathered at the edge. The servants from the Marquise Manor were pretending to hold long poles, fishing for a body. I stepped out of the carriage and staggered to the edge of the ravine, crying as if my heart were being torn apart. "Husband! Husband, how could you be so cruel?" Then I fainted. After watching plays for 40 years, singing, reciting, and acting all came naturally to me. After a brief moment, I woke again, and my voice became desolate and despairing. In the end, quite a few onlookers were moved to tears as well. I had performed enough. I choked out 2 sobs and let out a tragic, piercing cry. "Husband, your wife has come to accompany you." The moment the words left my lips, under the horrified gazes of the Liu family servants, I leaped into the deep ravine. Gasps of shock rang out everywhere. The wind howled past my ears as I plunged accurately into the pool below. The bone-chilling water instantly engulfed my entire body. I gritted my teeth, held my breath, quickly shed my outer clothing, and flung the phoenix crown into the water. Then I took a deep breath, dove to the bottom, and swam swiftly toward the shore. On the bank, where grass and water tangled densely, I hunched over and circled around before dashing straight into the forest. Deep in the woods, Taiyu had already driven a carriage there to wait. I climbed aboard, changed out of my soaked clothes and into the men's attire I usually wore when going out, and the carriage sped along a secret path out of the city. At the same time, on the cliff above, Taiyu led people to begin searching for my body. Of course, all they found were my formal wedding clothes and the phoenix crown. The young madam had committed suicide for love. The news spread back to the Marquise Manor. I did not need to guess to know that Madame Liu's heart was probably blooming with joy. The Marquise Manor had married me for my dowry. Now that the thorn in their side was dead, weren't those 80 chests of dowry all hers? It was a pity that those 80 chests were made of top-grade sandalwood. What a waste. The carriage traveled all the way to an estate on the outskirts of the imperial capital. This was one of the properties my parents had given me as dowry. Wrapped in cotton quilts the entire way, I was still a little cold, but it was much better than in my previous life. Back then, I had already suffered the cane, then struggled for a long time in the cold pool. My body had been damaged, and I would never have children again. The carriage stopped in front of a 2-room house on the estate. Chin Mama, who had come as part of my dowry, came out to greet me. She had been my mother's personal maidservant and had cared for me since childhood. Before marrying into the Marquis manor, I had guessed that a noble and prestigious household might not be able to tolerate me, so I had prepared an escape route early on and sent Chin Mama to the estate to arrange everything in case of unforeseen circumstances. I never expected I would actually need it. Seeing my face pale as death, Chin Mama panicked and quickly ordered someone to warm the heated brick bed in the main room. Then she instructed the kitchen to cook a thick pot of ginger soup. I curled up beneath the blankets, warmth gradually spreading through my body like a gentle hand wrapping around me. I dozed off in a daze. Before I could fall deeply asleep, the scent of ginger drifted into my nose. Chin Mama gently patted me. "Don't sleep yet, young miss. Drink the ginger soup while it's hot, sweat it out, then sleep. Catching a chill is no small matter." She held the bowl, blew on it gently, and fed it to me. The spicy warmth traveled down my throat and into my stomach, heating up my internal organs. I drank it all in one breath. Sunlight filtered through the window, casting broken golden patches across the room, making everything feel wonderfully warm. I stretched, and the aroma of food entered my nose. My stomach immediately rumbled. "Young miss is awake. Come eat something." Kin Mama entered carrying a food box. Taiyun tucked her legs beneath her and set a small table on the heated brick bed, then placed down a bowl of smooth steamed egg with perilla and a bowl of golden chicken noodles. "Young miss, eat while it's hot. Perilla dispels cold. Eating it will force out the cold qi. The chicken soup is nourishing and will help restore your vitality." I picked up a spoon and scooped a piece of the steamed egg. It melted in my mouth. The distinctive spicy fragrance of the perilla was like a gentle breeze scattering the cold qi from my body. Then I took a bite of the noodles. The rich flavor of the chicken broth wrapped around the noodles, making my whole body feel much more comfortable. Satisfied, I slurped down the last mouthful of noodles. Only then did Taiyun begin recounting the news Taiyu had sent early that morning. After I jumped into the ravine yesterday, Madame Lu had arrived by carriage, pretended to cry for a while, then used feeling unwell as an excuse to leave. As soon as the sky turned completely dark, the Lu family servants also withdrew one after another. Only Taiyu continued, leading the dowry maidservants, putting on a full performance of searching back and forth along the cliff face, not returning to the Marquis manor until the moon had risen high into the sky. When they dragged their heavy legs back to the manor, they discovered the side door had been tightly shut. They knocked for a long time, but there was not a single response from inside. Even Taijuan, who had stayed behind to watch the house, had been driven out. She was squatting in a corner by the door, hugging a small bundle of luggage, her face streaked with tears. Young Miss had only just left when they drove me out. Taiyu gritted her teeth and continued knocking. The night wind blew cold enough to make one shiver. The onlookers grew more and more numerous, whispering among themselves at the head of the alley. The Marquis manor is truly shameless. Their daughter-in-law has just committed suicide out of love, and they've already driven out all her dowry servants. Are they planning to swallow her dowry too? The Lin family from Shujiang are great wealthy merchants. Those 80 chests of dowry, even the chests themselves are made of sandalwood. They must be worth a fortune. Amid the discussions, Taiyu achieved her goal and withdrew, leading everyone back to the residence behind the street, the house from which I had just been married out that very day. The next morning, before dawn had fully broken, the main gate was pounded thunderously. Outside the door, Madame Lu's eyes and brows were filled with unconcealed anxiety. She had brought 7 or 8 strong serving women, along with a burly male servant. They looked fierce and aggressive. The moment Taiyu pulled open the door bolt, Madame Lu led her people surging inside, blocking the doorway as she demanded bluntly, "Where is your young Mrs. Dowry?" Taiyu performed a salute, neither hurried nor slow. Reporting to Madame, wasn't the dowry already carried into the manor in a grand procession? Hearing this, Madame Lu grew even angrier. Her voice rose sharply. "You cheap wench! I'm asking where the contents of the dowry are. Why are all the chests empty? Where did you hide the things?" Seeing how rude she was, Taiyu refused to back down. Madame's words are truly unreasonable. We beat gongs and drums while carrying in 80 chests of dowry. Everyone saw it. Yesterday, the moment something happened to our young miss, we dowry servants were driven out by you, while the dowry was left in the manor under your personal management for half a day. Now it is suddenly empty. I still want to ask you about that. Madame Lu's mouth twitched. Last night, after Taiyu and the others had been shut outside, she had immediately called for a locksmith to open all the dowry chests. She had thought they would be filled with gold, silver, silk, and jewels. But upon opening them one after another, she found every chest completely empty. At that moment, Madame Lu had gone weak in the knees and collapsed to the ground, unable to get up for a long time. Although the Lin family was far away in Shujiang, they were renowned wealthy merchants with businesses spanning the world. They absolutely would not allow their only daughter to marry out with empty dowry chests. She had not slept a wink all night, her mind in turmoil. The more she thought about it, the more rage choked her. Before dawn, she led her people charging over in fury. Seeing that Taiyu refused to tell the truth, Madame Lu composed herself and forced out a concerned expression. I was only anxious and confused. The Lin patriarch and Madame Lin have only one daughter. Now that she is gone, I already have difficulties explaining myself. If something else goes wrong with the dowry, I'm afraid the Lin patriarch, Madame Lin, and even you dowry servants will have a hard time explaining it. Taiyu timely revealed a hint of panic. Madame Lu immediately pressed on. Your Lin family does business across the world. Could it be that young Miss Lin only had the few things in those chests? Were there no other dowry items? For example, banknotes, land deeds, and such? Taiyu lowered her head and thought for a moment before replying, "If the old madam asks about this, there truly were some." The patriarch did prepare a stack of banknotes, saying they were for the young miss to keep as private savings after she entered her husband's household. Madame Lu's eyes instantly lit up. "Where are the banknotes?" Taiyu sighed and took out a handkerchief to wipe the corner of her eye. The young miss carried them on her person. She said she wanted to hand them to her husband personally on the wedding day. Now that something has happened to the young miss, those banknotes are probably still on her. Before she finished speaking, Taiyu had already begun sobbing loudly. Madame Lu's vision darkened. She forced herself to steady her body, turned and left, nearly tripping over the threshold. The serving women and male servant hurriedly followed. The group that had charged in so aggressively now staggered out, dejected and dispirited. Behind them, Taiyu covered her face and wept even louder. Beneath the handkerchief, the corner of her mouth could hardly suppress a smile. For the next 3 days, the servants of the Yangning Marquis Manor truly met with bloody bad luck. After the cold dew solar term, mountain winds whipped across faces like knives, and the water in the ravine pool grew even colder, piercing to the bone. A thin layer of ice crackled along the shore. At Madame Lu's command, the male servants immediately set up rafts and searched the pool inch by inch. In the deeper sections, they tied ropes around themselves and took turns diving down to search. When they surfaced, every one of them was shivering from the cold. Several had already begun running fevers, but Madame Lu would not allow them to stop. We must find the person if alive, and the body if dead. Clothes, shoes, even a sachet. Search thoroughly and fish everything up. She herself had no time to rest either. Wrapped in a thick cloak and holding a hand warmer, she personally stood on the cliff supervising. By the second day, she began coughing. By the third day, her face was flushed with fever. Her personal mama advised her, "Madam, the wind is too strong. You should return to the manor and rest. Leave this place for this servant to watch over." Madame Lu waved her hand. Her voice was already hoarse. "No, I must keep watch here personally. I absolutely cannot let outsiders profit from this." After being blown by the cold wind on the cliff for 3 full days, Madame Lu was red as a boiled shrimp by the morning of the 4th day and collapsed on the mountaintop. "Madam, you cannot continue facing the wind like this." The mama was frantic, stamping her feet. "Your health is what matters." Madame Lu raised her head and looked at the unfathomably deep pool, then at the male servants trembling from the cold, yet still having found nothing. At last she lost all hope. Grinding her teeth, she spat out one word: "Go." When the 80 chests of dowry had been carried into the manor, they had already been empty. If the dowry had not been empty, I would not have dared flee so freely. In recent years, refugees had gathered, bandits ran rampant, and Shujiang was 1,000 li from the capital. Moreover, there was a difference in status between the Marquis manor and my family. My parents, afraid that something unexpected might happen, had converted most of my dowry into banknotes from several banks in the capital, along with house and land deeds for me to carry on my person. The 80 dowry chests had only been there to deceive outsiders. Inside, they were completely empty. In addition, there was a cart of treasures secretly escorted by the Wei Yuan escort agency, waiting only for me to establish a firm footing in the Marquis manor before being delivered inside. That afternoon, while the sunlight was still gentle and warm, I released a carrier pigeon from the estate. A short note was tied to its leg, bearing only 2 characters, Wei Yang. This was the signal my parents and I had agreed upon beforehand. That cart of treasures would never be delivered to the capital. In my previous life, half of those treasures had been poured into the Marquis manor. 1/3 had been used to fill the deficit in military provisions that the old Marquis had left behind. From his youth, he had kept more than a dozen beauties in brothels, squandering the Marquis manor's fortune until it was drowning in debt. Another third had been used to maintain the manor's social connections and supplement Lu Wanyi's dowry. The remainder had been sent into the imperial palace to cultivate relationships and preserve the Marquis title for the Lu family. As dusk gradually fell and autumn winds rose, leaves scattered across the courtyard. The Yangning Marquis manor, with its unfilial descendants, should have turned to dust long ago, were the Lu family truly foolish to the bone, or had they read too many storybooks and fallen into wild fantasies. How else could they have nodded in agreement to Lu Yan's absurd plan of faking death? Madame Lu's natal family had committed a crime, and their entire clan had been escorted back to their ancestral home, forbidden from holding office for 5 generations. She had wanted to bring her niece into the household to lift up her natal family. That intention I could understand, but 1,000 mistakes, 10,000 mistakes. She should not have openly raised the daughter of a convicted official right under everyone's noses. And she certainly should not have deluded herself into thinking that girl could seize the position of main wife, a position I had painstakingly managed for years. Although the Marquis title was hereditary, There was no true, lasting wealth or nobility in this world. Back when their ancestors had established great achievements, 4 dukes and 9 marquises had been infeft, so prestigious and powerful. Looking back now, only 3 households remained, and that was not even mentioning the distant past. Even during the previous emperor's reign, the champion marquis had passed away young, leaving no heir to inherit. The title could be seized as easily as it was granted. The residence and estates were all reclaimed, and the entire family became commoners in the blink of an eye. 1 emperor, 1 set of ministers. Noble families like the Liu family, lacking imperial favor and without any real meritorious achievements, had occupied their positions for years without performing their duties. Yet they still dreamed of eternal wealth and nobility. Even without me lifting a finger, those new nobles in the capital, who were eager to prove themselves, had long been watching with wide eyes, waiting for the day the Liu family collapsed, so they could step over them and rise to the heavens in a single bound. I calmed myself and carefully recalled every single deficit in military provisions I had filled on behalf of the old marquis back then, recording them all. Then I had someone use their left hand to disguise the handwriting and make several dozen copies. In the dead of night, I quietly sent people to throw a few copies in front of the residences of His Majesty's maternal relatives, the Empress's maternal relatives, and the gates of several famously upright officials in the Court of Judicial Review. Of course, I did not overlook anyone. As the saying goes, a centipede dies, but never falls completely stiff. But at this point, it was time for the wall to collapse and everyone to push. How the court was shaken, I, merely a merchant's daughter, did not know clearly. But on the day the title was stripped, Taiyu stood at the front of the crowd of onlookers, eating melon seeds while watching from beginning to end. Then she ran back under cover of darkness to recount everything to me in detail. The main branch of the Liu family no longer had any male heirs. His Majesty, probably still mindful of the remaining female relatives, preserved a bit of dignity. He only stripped the title and reclaimed the residence, giving them half a day to pack their belongings before leaving. But now the Liu family was nothing but the empty shell of a marquis manor. Besides clothes and jewelry, what else was worth taking? Their last bit of silver had already been spent on the wedding arrangements, all in anticipation of me entering the household and spending my dowry. Watching helplessly as others sealed the marquis manor, Madame Liu finally seemed to awaken from her dream. Standing outside the gate, she beat her thighs and wailed. "My son is not dead. The Liu family still has its bloodline. I will summon him back immediately." The surrounding commoners whispered among themselves. No one had ever heard of faking death before. They all thought the old lady had gone mad. Lu Wanyi also wept and knelt before the officials, confiscating the residence, begging. Elder brother truly is still alive. He was only bewitched by that cheap woman, faking his death to leave, planning to return and inherit the title after she gave birth to a son. Our Marquis Manor truly still has its bloodline. I beg you, my lord, do not strip the title. Mother and daughter wept and pleaded. The official proclaiming the edict had long since lost patience and said coldly, "Did you not hear the imperial edict clearly? The title is being seized not only because there is no heir, but also because of old Marquis Sluchuan's crime of embezzlement." He paused, and his voice grew even deeper. "Madame Liu, today in court, the memorials accusing Marquis Liu of embezzlement piled up like a mountain. His Majesty flew into a thunderous rage. Merely stripping the title was already leaving you some face. If the old madam continues to make a scene, do not blame me for becoming ruthless." As soon as he finished speaking, his blade was drawn from its sheath. Madame Liu and Lu Wanyi were so terrified they immediately stopped crying. The man continued, "I advise you to pack quickly. I am busy today and will only give you the time it takes 1 stick of incense to burn." Only then did Madame Lu and Lu Wanyi truly panic. Weeping as they frantically gathered their belongings, Taiyu watched the Marquis Manor fall into utter chaos, finished half a bag of melon seeds from Rui Xiang's studio, and returned contentedly to the Lin residence behind the street. Just as she sat down and picked up her rice bowl, a knock sounded at the outer door. The gatekeeper came to report that people from the Lu family had arrived. Madame Lu was still putting on airs, saying that, after all, the two families were in-laws. Although the young miss had passed away, filial piety remained. She wanted to come stay there for a while. Taiyu set down her chopsticks and unhurriedly instructed the gatekeeper to bring out the large wolfhound and scare them a little. Young miss is gone. What filial piety is there left to speak of? If they continue making a scene, release the dog to bite first, then report to the authorities that they swallowed our young Mrs. Dowry. The gatekeeper received the order and went out. The crowd of onlookers grew larger and larger. When the Lu family had been prestigious, they had often bullied neighbors and locals, earning no goodwill. Now, countless people wanted to watch the spectacle, and a few troublemakers began chiming in. The Marquis title has already been stripped. What Marquis are you still talking about? Madame Lu was momentarily choked speechless, her face red as pig liver. Lu Wanyi, however, was a bit quicker than her mother and immediately continued in a mournful, pitiful tone. "Dear neighbors, our Lu family was framed by servants. We are truly wronged. My elder brother, Lu Yan, is truly still alive in this world. Once he returns, everything will naturally become clear. No matter how much she acted, the people around only treated it as entertainment." Dusk gradually descended. The last red glow on the horizon was swallowed by clouds. A chill swirled through the alley on the wind. Blown by the cold wind, Madame Lu's mind actually cleared a little, and she began pounding on the door again. Lin Jing lived as a person of our Lu family, and in death she will be a ghost of the Lu family. Now we have nowhere to return to, and can only seek shelter with our in-laws. The Lin family is as wealthy as a nation. Providing us with a meal and a place to sleep will not cost much. Open the door quickly. We are all family. Do not force us to the end of our rope. I, an old woman, am fine, but there is still an unmarried young lady. Are we to let mother and daughter sleep on the streets? Lu Wanyi also opportunistically knelt and crawled 2 steps forward, cowering toward the door. Her voice was desolate. "Sister-in-law, if your spirit still lingers in the afterlife, please open your heart of mercy." Before the words had fully left her mouth, the gate slammed open with a crash. A large wolfhound with glossy fur charged out, growling low and baring its white teeth. The crowd of onlookers collectively retreated a large step. The gatekeeper held the dog and said unhurriedly, "The young miss is gone. There is no longer any talk of filial piety. If you insist on bringing up connections, then the 80 chests of dowry that vanished without a trace in the Lu Manor must be properly accounted for. If the old madam continues lingering shamelessly at our door, I will report it to the authorities. At that point, you will not have to worry about wandering the streets. There will naturally be a prison to take you in." The onlookers' gazes all turned toward Madame Lu and Lu Wanyi. They owed debts and refused to repay, yet still had the thick skin to cling to another family's door. Truly shameless, Madame Lu's lips trembled several times, but in the end, she said nothing. Struggling to her feet, she pulled Lu Wanyi around and left. The gatekeeper slammed the door shut. The large wolfhound wagged its tail and returned. That night, Madame Lu wandered about in a sorry state. After leaving the Lin residence, she went to the Qin family's residence. Previously, she had intended to form a marriage alliance with the Qin family, but had hesitated because she disdained the Qin patriarch's 5th-rank official position as too low. Now, the Qin family would not even bother to open their door. Mother and daughter could only swallow their humiliation and stay in an inn. Taiyun recounted this to me, her voice full of sarcasm. They've fallen to this point, yet they're still staying in a heavenly grade room at the inn. No wonder their family fortune was squandered. I laughed heartily and leisurely took a sip from the teacup in my hand. In my previous life, the Liu family had used a letter of divorce to sweep me out the door, not even allowing me to take a single coin. Now, mother and daughter could still use silver hairpins to pay for their room and stay in a heavenly grade room at the inn. In the end, it was still too comfortable for them. Thinking back to how I had poisoned them in my past life, settling scores on the spot, had truly been extremely satisfying. I slept at night without a single worry on my mind. My life was meant to be glorious and splendid. Why should I entangle myself with these blood-sucking leeches? I was determined to trample them into the mud early, trample them thoroughly, and never give them even a single chance to cling to me again. Only then could I live my happy life in peace and joy. The matters in the capital were mostly wrapped up. Madame Liu and Liu Wanyi were barely getting by at the inn, using silver hairpins to pay for lodging and pawning bracelets for food, growing more destitute by the day. I had people monitoring them. According to my memories from my previous life, the silver they had would not last even 1 month. I did not need to lift a finger. They would squander themselves into poverty. What I needed to worry about was Liu Yan news from the people I had sent to follow him arrived. Liu Yan, leading Lu Feng and carrying the last remaining banknotes from the Marquis Manor, planned to travel leisurely through the landscapes of Jiangnan for 3 years. He was completely unaware that the sky in the capital had already fallen, half a month past, and my body fully recovered. During that time, Chin Mama found me the best tonifying and blood-nourishing prescriptions. Every day, she used medicinal meals to nourish me. Now my complexion was rosy and healthy, my eyes bright and clear. I could finally go out and make a move. I led my trusted maidservant Kaiyan and 7 or 8 exceptionally skilled guards, spurring our horses in pursuit of Liu Yan. When we caught up, Liu Yan and Lu Feng were at the ferry crossing. A light drizzle was falling. They were about to board a boat to Jiangnan. The two of them shared a single oiled paper umbrella, standing shoulder to shoulder beneath a willow tree by the ferry. I did not know what Lu Feng said, but Liu Yan lowered his head to look at her, his face full of smiles. That appearance was truly one of deep affection. On the surface, the boat looked like an ordinary passenger vessel. The boat owner was an honest, simple young man with a Jiangnan accent, speaking with an extremely affable smile. When Liu Yan went to ask the price, the boat owner quoted a perfectly fair amount and even enthusiastically helped them carry their luggage. Liu Yan and Lu Feng happily boarded the boat and even asked the boat owner for a pot of tea. They sat chatting and laughing while waiting for departure. The boat slowly left the dock. The scenery on the shore gradually receded. Liu Yan stood at the bow, hands clasped behind his back, gazing at the ink-green mountains on both sides. The river breeze brushed his face, and he looked utterly at ease. Lu Feng leaned beside him, softly reciting some poem, something like misty rain descending on Yangzhou. I was on another boat, following silently from a distance. After the boat had traveled for more than half a day, rocking along the embankment, Liu Yan and Lu Feng had already fallen unconscious. The knockout drug had been placed in the tea. The boatman was my guard. Flinching. Even this boat had been purchased by me the day before, solely for today. Lin Sheng waved his oar toward us, and my boat quickly approached. Kaiyan stepped forward and pried open Liu Yan's mouth. I took out the bowl of self-terminating medicine I had prepared and cooled in advance, pouring it bit by bit into his mouth. I even thoughtfully gave him another pot of tea to rinse it down with. Both of them were searched thoroughly. Banknotes, dust, and loose silver were all taken by me. Once I finished, The guards quickly carried the two into the small hold below deck, bound their hands and feet, and stuffed cloth into their mouths to prevent them from making noise if they woke midway. Satisfied, I returned to my own boat. As for Lin Sheng, he turned the boat toward the open sea, heading south day and night without pause, rowing deep into the ocean. In the deep sea, I had long prepared a deserted island, since Liu Yan no longer cared about his marquis status and insisted on pursuing true love. Then I would give him and Lu Feng that chance. Without banknotes, without servants, without the glory and wealth of the Marquess manor, without any need to worry about heirs as a burden. Just the two of them, quiet and peaceful on that island, with no one to disturb them for eternity. Meanwhile, I would remain in the capital, grandly opening a glorious and splendid life of my own. Checkry point. 3,000 words, 20 min at 150 WPM, although the Lin family had amassed great wealth through commerce, scholars, farmers, artisans, and merchants had always been ranked in that order. Merchants were still at the bottom. My parents, despite being great tycoons in Shujiang, still found it hard to avoid being schemed against by a fallen Marquess manor. I wanted to change the status quo and make the Lin family imperial merchants. In previous dynasties, imperial merchants had been granted the position of Minister of the Imperial Stud, a rank 2 office, for helping the court gather military provisions. But now the world was at peace and there were no wars. To seek an official path, one had to find another way. Since my time in Shujiang, I had advised my father to sponsor impoverished but talented students. That spring, among the students sponsored by the Lin family, 3 entered officialdom. The most outstanding was Wen Zheng, who placed second in the palace examination. In the palace exam, he was personally praised by His Majesty for his seasoned writing and deemed worthy of important use. He was now appointed as records administrator under the Jingzhao Yin, specifically managing the construction of the capital. Wen Zheng was a grateful person. After the Golden List was announced, he sent word that as long as there was a request, he would never refuse. In my previous life, it was also thanks to his protection that I had only suffered minor injuries from those 20 cane strokes. Otherwise, I could not have escaped the cold pool later. Now, in my heart, I was planning to have him help me with something. The court wanted to open trade with the western regions and planned to expand the eastern market. The current eastern market was in the southeast of the capital, and its area was no longer sufficient. The diplomatic quarters of the Court of State Ceremonial were in the north, where envoys from various countries resided, making travel inconvenient. The most suitable location happened to be the area where the Marquis Manor was located. It connected to the foreign quarters on the outside, bordered the old Eastern Market to the east, connected to the official road in the north, and sat close to the transport dock in the south. It was naturally perfect. I had flipped through the capital's map no fewer than 100 times. I could recite every alley and street by heart. Besides the Marquess Manor, most of that area consisted of old residential houses, and there were not too many households. Although buying it would cost a great deal, my financial resources could still support it. I secretly had 7 or 8 brokers negotiate for me, with prices fluctuating high and low, so no one would realize the same person was behind all the purchases. Once the outer area was connected into one piece, I began moving on the inner part. After 5 months, I finally purchased all 72 residential houses. Then, bringing along a stack of land deeds and a newly drawn plan for the expanded Eastern Market, I dressed in men's attire and went to the house in the capital that I had prepared for Wen Zheng. The moment Wen Zheng saw the drawing, his eyes lit up. Although he had placed second in the palace examination, his qualifications were still shallow, and he had no significant political achievements yet. This plan to expand the eastern market was like sending charcoal in snowy weather. The Lin family is willing to donate 36 plots of land in our name, along with all the residential land we purchased, to the court for the expansion of the eastern market. We ask only one thing in return, that Lord Wen help arrange matters. Wenjung clasped his hands. Young miss, you are my benefactor. There is no need to call me Lord. Just call me Wenjung. If there is anything, feel free to speak. He pondered for a moment. Please grant my father an official position. Wenjung was silent for a while. Then he raised his head and looked at me. Based on this drawing and the land deeds, according to custom, it is indeed possible to seek an official position. I only do not know what rank the young miss desires. I smiled. Lord Wen, what rank do you think this piece of land from my Lin family is worth? Wenjung did not answer immediately. He lowered his head and carefully examined the drawing once more. The map was drawn with extreme meticulousness. Where to build shops, where to erect warehouses, where to open roads, where to arrange foreign merchants' quarters. Everything was clearly annotated. Even drainage and fire prevention alleys had been considered. This was absolutely not something that could be drawn in a day or two, let alone by an outsider who did not understand city planning. Wenjung looked at me deeply, carefully put away the map, and stood up. Young miss, rest assured, this official will do his utmost. After he left, Kaiyun leaned close and whispered, Young miss, can Lord Wen really do it? He is only a 6th rank official. He himself cannot do it, I said, but he knows who can. I raised my teacup and blew gently. The Jingzhou Yin needs achievements. The Ministry of Works needs merit. The Ministry of Revenue needs to save the treasury. The Lin family is gifting a piece of land and a complete plan for free. All 3 yamen benefit. Who can stop this? Kaiyun nodded, half understanding. My parents entered the capital soon after. Living this life again, seeing my parents for the first time, the emotions surging in my heart were almost overwhelming. In my previous life, I had hidden in the western regions, thousands of li away from my parents, leaving them to worry about me even when they should have been enjoying their later years. It had truly been unfilial. In this life, I was determined to fulfill my father's long-cherished wish and make the Lin family stand tall and proud in the capital. 3 months later, the imperial edict arrived. My father, who had dominated the business world for half his life, still trembled as he knelt to receive the edict. In one step, he became Minister of State Ceremonial, managing the reception of envoys from all directions, a high rank 2 minister at court. My mother was also granted a rank 2 noble title. The edict regarding the expansion of the eastern market clearly stated that after the market was expanded, the entire western street would be given to the Lin family to plan and manage on their own. Taxes would be halved for 5 years. That was more practical than any other reward. That piece of land, after the old houses were demolished and the new market was built, would become prosperous. The rent from the shops alone would be a deal that turned 1 into 10,000. 2 years later, on the day the expanded eastern market was completed, 10,000 people poured into the streets of the capital. The main road of the new eastern market was wide enough for 6 carriages to travel side by side. The road was paved with freshly quarried green stone, with neat and orderly drainage ditches on both sides. Though it was called a market, it was more like a small city with ward walls on all 4 sides and watchtowers at the 4 corners. Each side, west, south, and north, had 1 gate. Bells rang in the morning, drums sounded at night. The rules were strict, yet the market was lively all the same. Stepping into the Western Merchant District felt like entering another world. The calls of merchants from the western regions, the music of kucha performers, the shouts of vendors from Khotan selling pastries, and the gongs and drums from the opera alley all blended together like a thick, bubbling soup, steam rising in waves, merchants from various countries, camel caravans from the western regions, monks from Tianzhu, wealthy merchants from Arab lands, along with officials, commoners, small traders, and artisans of the capital, rubbed shoulders in the crowd. It was truly a scene of peace and prosperity. In the Persian merchants' spice shops, saffron, pepper, cardamom, and cloves were piled high. The Arab merchants' jewelry shops were filled with things the capital had never seen before: emeralds, moonstones, lapis lazuli, and even a kind of sweet pearl that changed color with the light. The shop was packed 3 layers deep inside and out, so crowded that not even water could squeeze through. From the grape wine tavern of the Kucha people came a rich, sweet fragrance. The mouths of the jars were covered with cloth, and through narrow tubes, the wine flowed out, red as fine cinnabar. Beside them, several Kucha women with high buns played curved pipas, producing melodies that were graceful and lingering. "Make way! Make way! The camel caravan is coming!" someone shouted, and the crowd automatically parted. A team of camels slowly approached, followed by several ox carts loaded with rolled carpets and felts. Suddenly, from afar came the sound of gongs and drums. "The opera alley has begun its performance," someone else shouted, and a large crowd surged southward. After the old Marquis Manor was leveled, I had built a large theater there. On all 4 sides were wooden viewing stands, with a large stage in the middle. Tall flagpoles were planted around it, hung with colorful banners. On the stage, wrestlers were performing. 2 strong men, bare-chested and wearing only short cloths, grappled back and forth with thunderous impacts. Beside them was an open space where people had formed a circle. In the middle, a storyteller was recounting the 3 kingdoms, striking his wake-up block while narrating Zhao Zilong charging 7 times in and out of the battlefield. His voice rang out powerfully, saliva flying as he spoke. Even the vendor selling candied hawthorns nearby listened so intently that he forgot to hawk his goods. Further ahead was the acrobatic stage. A youth of about 14 or 15 held a bamboo pole in his mouth, balancing a porcelain bowl on top while spinning 3 plates with his hands and riding a unicycle around the stage. The onlookers were dazzled. Against the northern wall stood a row of small tents where Western region performers had set up demonstrations of illusions. A tall, thin Persian man spread a black cloth on the ground, muttering incantations. Then he suddenly jerked the cloth up. There was actually a coiled snake on the ground. The onlookers cried out in fear, but could not help crowding closer. There were also performers from Fulan who could conjure fire from thin air. Rubbing his hands together, blue flames leapt from his fingertips, flickering eerily. In my heart, I secretly calculated that this alone was not enough. I needed to find a few more opera troupes, crosstalk performers, shadow puppeteers, marionette players, and more. I would bring them all here. Best to find a few more people to sing little tunes and set up a cool tent nearby selling tea and wine so people could watch while drinking. That would be true enjoyment. At dusk, I stood at the main gate of the former Marquis Manor, now the entrance to Opera Alley, and looked back at the entire eastern Market Street. The sun was setting, casting golden afterglow over the green stone road, draping the whole street in shimmering light. As the lanterns were lit, the lamps of the eastern market shone one by one, dyeing the street red. The sound of gongs and drums from the distant opera alley grew louder and louder, vaguely like the opening of a grand play. Liu Yan had been traveling toward the capital. The closer he got, the more uneasy he felt. He remembered that the street in front of the Marquis Manor had once been one of the quietest alleys in the capital. Both sides had been lined with scholar trees, their canopies covering the entire road in summer, but now this street was 3 times wider, paved with new green stone, with shops lined one after another on both sides. Every few steps, there was a stall selling all kinds of goods. His heart skipped a beat, but he still held on to one sliver of hope. 3 years had passed. The capital had changed greatly. Taking a wrong turn was common. Turning a corner, the place that had been the Marquis Manor in his memory finally appeared before his eyes. A vast empty plot. A fluttering banner reading Marquis Manor Opera Alley waved in the wind. Beneath that banner, a strong man in red pants was performing the chess stone act. A green stone slab weighing over 100 caddies was placed on his chest. Another strong man swung a large hammer down with a shout. The stone shattered into several pieces, and the surrounding crowd erupted in thunderous cheers. Lu Yan's face instantly turned ashen. A performer with a 30-foot bamboo pole balanced on his head passed by. On top of the pole, a 7 or 8-year-old child stood unsteadily, spinning 3 colorful plates in his hands. "Make way! Make way!" the performer shouted twice. Lu Yan still stood there, dazed, staring fixedly at the banner as if his acupuncture points had been struck. "Make way!" the performer shouted again, louder this time. Just then, the fire-swallowing performer across the way reached the climax of his act. A stream of fire shot from his mouth, not upward, but straight across Lu Yan's head. Lu Yan felt a burning sensation on his scalp, then smelled a familiar burnt odor. On the deserted island, sometimes when he grilled fish, if the fire was too big, the fish tail would burn and give off exactly this smell. In an instant, his head and face were covered in soot, black as charcoal. The crowd around him froze for a moment. Then they burst into loud laughter. Lu Yan yelped and took 2 steps back, frantically slapping his head to extinguish the smoking hair. The fire-swallowing performer was also startled. Sorry, honored guest. You stood too close. I was performing fire swallowing, and you stood right in front of me. Isn't that asking to be burned? This is the Yangning Marquis Manor. How dare you act wildly on my territory? Lu Yan's chest heaved violently. The people around him crowded over. The Yangning Marquis Manor has no heir. Its title was stripped 3 years ago. Which remote mountain did you crawl out of? You didn't even know this. It was like a thunderclap exploding beside his ears. Lu Yan had imagined 10,000 scenes of returning home. He thought that by washing his hands of everything and leaving, someone would naturally clean up the mess for him. When he returned from his leisurely travels through mountains and rivers, he would still be the heir of the Marquis Manor. But now his eyes swept around him, camel caravans of foreign merchants, acrobatic stalls, storytelling stages, opera troupes, every word stuck in his throat. The Marquis Manor was gone. Someone beside him kindly said, "I still have half a bottle of golden wound medicine for burns. Why don't you take it and try?" Lu Yan shot him a fierce glare and turned to leave. He walked too fast and tripped over a protruding green stone, staggering 2 steps and nearly falling. The crowd burst into another round of laughter. This person must have something wrong with his head, blind and stupid beyond saving. Lu Yan shook his head vigorously. He had only been gone 3 years. How could heaven and earth change so quickly? Suspecting he was dreaming, he fiercely pinched himself but did not wake. He slapped himself hard twice more. Still, he did not wake. His home was truly gone. Lu Feng followed behind him, wearing tattered old clothes. Her hair was dry and yellow, her face cracked from the sea wind. Timidly, she tugged at his sleeve. "Where are we going?" Lu Yan ignored her and staggered straight toward the Jingzhou Yin Yamen. He was the Yangning Marquis, a descendant of meritorious officials infeft by the previous emperor. As long as he returned, everything could still be turned around. Lu Yan waited outside the Yamen for half a day before finally squeezing inside. A runner from the Jingzhou Yin glanced at him, his eyes as if looking at a beggar. The Yangning Marquis Manor had its title stripped 3 years ago. Lu Yan slammed his palm on the table. "I'm not dead yet. On what grounds was my title stripped?" The runner slowly flipped open a file and tossed it in front of him. Lu Yan lowered his head to look, and his vision immediately darkened in waves. Old Marquis Lu Xuan embezzled military provisions in large quantities. His crime was unpardonable, title stripped, forever barred from official use. The words "forever barred from official use" burned before his eyes, making his head spin. The runner added, "As for your wife, on the wedding day, she jumped into the ravine to commit suicide out of love." The manor had no male heir left. Naturally, the title could not be preserved. Lu Yan opened his mouth, but not a single word came out. He had thought that by leaving, he had placed himself in a dead end in order to survive, pushing every problem onto Lin Jing. She would naturally clean up the mess, but Lin Jing had actually died too. He had driven himself into a true dead end. Coming out of the Jingzhao Yin, Lu Yan felt as though all the strength had been drained from his body. He went everywhere asking about his mother's whereabouts. She should still have some money, after all. But when he found Madame Lu, the heart hanging in suspense in his chest dropped to the ground with a thud. Madame Lu was living in a dilapidated house in the southern part of the city. Half the courtyard wall had collapsed, and the paint on the door was peeling in patches. She was sitting on the doorstep, picking through a pile of wilted vegetables for the parts still edible. Her hair had turned completely white, and her clothes were patched in more than a dozen places. "Mother," Madame Lu raised her head. Her cloudy eyes looked at him for a long time. Suddenly, she let out a shrill cry and rushed forward, hitting and punching him. "You beast! You only cared about yourself. You ran away and lost the entire manor, lost the title. You have ruined me!" Lu Yan was driven back step by the blows. The guilt in his heart quickly turned to anger. He grabbed his mother's wrist and lowered his voice. "Mother blames me?" But back then, it was Mother who nodded and let me go. It was Mother who came up with the idea to let Lin Jing pay the debts and wait for me to return after they were cleared. Madame Lu was shouted at like this and choked, unable to speak. She could only cry. Lu Yan grew angrier as he spoke. "Does Mother know how much I suffered outside on that deserted island for 3 years? Eating raw fish, drinking rainwater, nearly starving to death. I finally managed to return with great difficulty. And Mother? Mother has ruined the house to this state and still has the face to blame me." Madame Lu was scolded until her whole body trembled. She could not reply with a single word. Lu Wanyi pushed the door open and came in. Seeing Lu Yan, she first froze. Then her expression turned cold. She said icily, "You still know the way back?" Lu Yan was already full of anger. Seeing his sister speak with such sarcasm only fueled the fire. "What kind of attitude is that? I am your elder brother." "Elder brother?" Lu Wanyi's voice immediately rose sharply. "Are you worthy of being called elder brother? You led that vixen and ran away, abandoning the whole family without a care, forcing me to become someone else's concubine, and you still have the face to return? Becoming a concubine was your own choice. I did not force you. There wasn't even food to eat. If I didn't go serve others, was I supposed to starve to death with Mother?" Brother and sister went back and forth, arguing more and more fiercely, until they finally came to blows. Lu Wanyi scratched Lu Yan's face. Lu Yan pushed her back, and she fell heavily to the ground, crying heartbreakingly. In the end, the neighbors could no longer stand it and shouted over the wall, "What are you arguing about? Argue more, and we'll report you to the authorities." Only then did this noisy scene come to an end. Lu Yan stayed in the southern part of the city. He understood very well that his mother could not be relied upon, and his sister even less so. He had to find a way to survive on his own. He inquired with quite a few old friends, but none of them would lend him even a single coin. They avoided him like the plague. However, they did give him one useful piece of news. Lin Jing's father, Lin Yuanshan, was now flourishing. The only daughter of the Lin family had died. If Lu Yan was willing to humble himself and care for Father Lin in his old age, Then, relying on the Lin family's vast fortune and their connections in officialdom, he would definitely still have a chance to make a comeback. Full of confidence, Lu Yan used the last bit of silver from Madame Lu to buy a decent set of clothes and went to the Lin residence. Father Lin met him in the front hall. His face was cold enough to freeze over. Lu Yan smiled appeasingly. "Uncle Lin, there was some misunderstanding back then." "Misunderstanding?" Lin Yuanshan's voice suddenly rose sharply. "On the wedding night, you led your cousin and faked your death to run away, causing my daughter to jump into a ravine. And you dare tell me it was a misunderstanding?" Uncle Lin, at that time, this nephew was also forced by circumstances. Lin Yuanshan did not give him a chance to finish. He turned and ordered the gatekeeper, "Beat this beast out for me. If he dares come again, directly send him to the authorities and accuse him of plotting for wealth and harming lives." Two servants stepped forward, one on each side, grabbed Lu Yan and threw him out the door. Lu Yan fell flat on his face, his hat lost, his clothes torn, in a miserable state. I was hidden in the carriage behind him, quietly observing from afar, nearly bursting into laughter. Lu Yan left dejectedly. Halfway down the road, a group of people suddenly poured out from an alley and surrounded him. The leader had a fierce, fleshy face. He waved a wooden staff in his hand and looked at Lu Yan with narrowed eyes and a smile. "Oh, isn't this Marcus Lu? 5 years without seeing you, and you have finally returned. Your father owed our Wanhu house 13,000 taels back then. With interest, it is now 20,000 taels. How do you propose to settle this debt?" Lu Yan's calves began to tremble. That was my father's debt. It has nothing to do with me." "Nothing to do with you?" The man slammed his staff on the ground. "Back then, you were in the brothels with your father, embracing women on both sides. You didn't say that then." Lu Yan tried to run, but he was immediately grabbed by the collar. "Brothers, Marcus Lu's body is precious. Let us find a place to talk properly." He was dragged straight into the alley. Screams of agony rang out continuously, enough to make one's scalp tingle. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the leader walked out, dusted off his sleeves, and sneered. No longer a marquis, and still putting on airs. Lu Yan lay there for a long time before he could catch his breath. He struggled to his feet and limped away. After this great disaster, he began to resent everyone. He hated his lustful father for ruining everything. He hated his useless mother. He hated his sister for not being able to marry into a good family. He hated Lin Jing for dying too early. He hated the creditors for showing him no respect. But the person he hated most was Lu Feng. If she had not seduced him, why would he have been moved to run away? If it had not been for chasing after her, how could he have fallen to his current state? Lu Yan's temper grew more irritable by the day. He began beating Lu Feng. At first, it was only verbal abuse. Later, he directly used his hands and feet. Lu Feng was beaten until her body was covered in green and purple bruises. She used her hair to cover the wounds on her face and her sleeves to cover the bruises on her arms. She quietly cooked porridge, washed clothes, and cleaned the house like a wooden puppet. She had thought of running away, but she had nowhere to go. Her natal family had been convicted, and distant relatives refused to take her in. Without Lu Yan, even surviving would be difficult. She could only endure. But how long could she endure? That night, Lu Yan returned drunk. In his drunkenness, he grabbed Lu Feng by the hair, pulled her to the ground, and stomped hard on her waist. "It's all because of you. It's all because of you, this cheap wench, that I am ruined." Lu Feng curled up on the ground, hugging her head and saying nothing. A few days later, while Lu Feng was cooking porridge in the kitchen, she heard Lu Yan and Lu Wanyi talking in the room. Lu Wanyi's voice was very low. "I have already asked around. Although she was married before, her looks are still there. The brothel over there is willing to pay this price. Ah, this cheap wench has harmed me so terribly. Selling her is already letting her off lightly. Lu Feng's hand holding the ladle paused. The flame under the stove crackled softly. A small paper packet was hidden in her sleeve. It was rat poison a peddler had dropped that morning. At the time, she had picked it up as if possessed. It turned out it was for this moment. The peddler had been arranged by me. When the porridge was ready, Lu Feng poured the powder in and stirred it evenly. No trace could be seen. She ladled 3 bowls and brought them to the table. Lu Yan picked up his bowl and took a sip, frowning. "Why does it taste a little bitter?" Lu Feng lowered her head. "Perhaps I added too much salt." Lu Yan said nothing more and drank the bowl of porridge in a few gulps. Lu Feng picked up her own bowl, looked at the murky porridge inside, and tilted her head back to drink it all in one go. In my previous life, I had personally poisoned them. In this life, after going around in circles, they still ended up feeding the poison to themselves with their own hands. Some people were born as strangling vines. 3 days after Lu Yan died, I restored my identity and returned home. To the outside world, my explanation was that after jumping into the ravine, I lost my memory and was rescued by a nun in a nunnery. The nun was advanced in age. I served in the nunnery for 3 years. Only after the nun passed away did I come down the mountain where I was recognized and brought home. Whether outsiders doubted it or not, I no longer cared. The Lin family was now like the midday sun. Countless people were willing to flatter me. Half a month after I returned home, Madame Lu stood outside the residence and cursed loudly. "Lin Jing, you poisonous woman! You are the one who killed my son. If you had not run away, how could the manor have fallen into ruin? My father was about to go out and deal with her when I stopped him. I had avoided the Lu family for 3 years. It was time to end everything. I had a grand tutor chair placed outside the door and leisurely debated with Madame Lu. Madame Lu, your words are incorrect. Your son led his cousin away and faked his death first. The Lu family's title was stripped because of embezzlement and breaking the law. This is clearly written in the files of the Court of Judicial Review. What does it have to do with a widow who had only been in the household for 2 hours? Madame Lu still insisted, "My son only jumped into the ravine and lost his memory, which is why he did not return." I laughed. "Really? Then what a coincidence. I also jumped into the ravine and lost my memory, which is why I did not return. The feng shui at the bottom of that ravine must be bad. It specifically damages the mind. If the old madam wants to investigate clearly, you can try jumping once yourself. When you return, we can compare statements." Madame Lu's face turned red as pig liver. "You are truly unfilial." I withdrew my smile. Old Madam, Volume B, Article 17 of the Great Zhou Laws clearly states that a woman who has lost her husband may return to her natal home on her own. No one may force her to remain chaste. Your son and I never even consummated our marriage. There is no question of filial or unfilial. You schemed against me. In the end, Madame Lu could no longer hold back and shouted hoarsely. I stood up, walked in front of her, bent down, and spoke in a voice only the 2 of us could hear. "That is right. I did scheme against you. Those 80 chests of dowry were empty from the beginning. I never intended to fill your pit. You only allowed yourselves a prestigious noble family to scheme against a merchant's daughter like me. You don't allow me to protect myself and scheme back against you?" Madame Lu's mouth twitched. She could not say a single word. "Old Madam, the wheel of fortune turns." I stood up straight and looked down at her. "Back then, your Marquis manor was powerful and prestigious. You could bully a merchant's daughter like me at will. Now I am the daughter of a rank 2 official, and you are just a commoner in plain clothes. I had her sent back to the dilapidated house in the southern city. If she died in front of the Lin residence, it would be too unlucky. Life returned to peace. My father was smooth sailing at court, and business in the Eastern market continued to grow. Everything at home was wonderful. Sometimes I would think of the western regions from my previous life. The road I often traveled westward, the vast desert, with solitary smoke rising beneath the setting sun, the long river, with the sunset over the plains, the sound of camel bells tinkling in the wind. That had been the freest period of my previous life. The court wanted to open a mutual market in Ganzhou, allowing merchants from the Central Plains to trade with the countries of the western regions. Ganzhou, a strategic point in the Hexi corridor, the newly opened mutual market there contained enormous business opportunities. I bid farewell to my parents, wanting to go there and open a new horizon. The day I left the capital was beautiful, the sky was high, the clouds were light, and the autumn wind was cool. The carriage slowly drove out through the city gate. I lifted the carriage curtain and looked back at the silhouette of the capital one last time. The city gate grew farther and farther away. The city wall grew smaller and smaller, finally becoming a gray line on the horizon. Taiyun, sitting beside me, asked, "Young miss, when will we return from this trip?" I thought for a moment and smiled. "No rush. When we have seen enough of the desert sunset, then we'll talk." The convoy traveled westward. After 3 days, we reached a post station. I got off the carriage to change horses, planning to ride for a while and stretch my muscles. Just as I turned to mount the horse, I heard the sound of galloping hooves from behind. A man on a red horse came racing toward us, covered in road dust. It was when I reined in my horse and watched him gallop up to me, smiling as I raised my eyebrows. "Lord Wen, where are you headed?" He steadied himself on horseback and opened his mouth, coughing twice. He had probably ridden too fast and caught a mouthful of dust. "It happens to be the same road as you. Ganzhou Sima." Ganzhou Sima, a 6th-rank military official managing military affairs and public security in Ganzhou. I looked at him and suddenly laughed. From records administrator of the Jingzhou Yin to Ganzhou Sima, this counted as being demoted 2 ranks in a row. His ears turned red, but he still maintained a serious and proper expression. The mutual market in Ganzhou is a major matter for the court. It happens that I also want to go to Ganzhou. It happens, does it? It happens. I gently urged my horse forward. The sound of hooves was crisp, and the autumn wind brushed past our faces. The camel caravan was about to depart, camel bells ringing in the wind. As for those who had already gone far, they were all stories from the previous chapter. The wind blew, the page turned, and I was about to begin a new story.